Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football live video show. As always, it's Carter, Ben, and Mitch here to talk Alabama football with you. And as has been done so far this season, this show will be hosted on houndstoothheroes.com after we're finished. You can find them on Facebook also, and on Twitter at @HToothHeroes. Okay, so that was deeply satisfying this past week. I am glad that we had all that cocky talk on the show last week, and then Alabama went out and
outdid our score projections.
made us look good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did better than we even thought they would.
Right.
I want to start with the offense. The offense performed. We'll get to the defense a little bit later. The offense performed pretty much in line with our expectations, I would say.
Yeah, I think Jalen had some struggles in the passing, and really struggled in ways that he has not struggled this. Like he just, for those of you that looked at my film review this week, he just had a couple throws that were just sort of wide open guys that he just made terrible throws and missed. And that's not really something he's done a whole lot. You know, for whatever struggles he's had, he hasn't just like totally missed open guys, right. And he did a little bit of that on Saturday.
Accuracy, his issue in the intermediate passing game is his timing, right? He's getting the ball out on time. It's not his accuracy. He is a pretty accurate passer in the intermediate part of the field. And like Carter just said, I mean, he just had a couple misses. But, say this for Jalen. He had a pretty bad throwing first half. And, we were talking about that whole time. And he came back in the third quarter and he missed that throw to Dieter along the right side. I think it might have been on their first possession. It was a really bad miss. He was wide open. And then from there, he had as good a passing quarter as he has had all season.
After that, he had some really nice throws.
That one throw on that post corner route to Calvin, on the left side, that's as good a throw as he's made all year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was the one I think where they ran a zone read look and did play action off it, and then had OJ come over and pick up the guy that it looked like they were going to option. That was a really well designed play.
Yeah. That was also the one where Trayvon Diggs got way too much depth on his route. Yeah.
And you can see he's coming over. It's like I think it's like a dig route or something. He just gets like 5, 7, 8 yards way too deep down the field, and he's breaking straight toward the sideline.
He wanted to catch it.
Yeah. Well, he's coming straight toward the sideline like he's supposed to on that route, and then he sees the ball in the air and he thinks it's
like,
for him.
Shit,
you can see him pull out deeper from there because he thinks the ball is in the air.
Right. And the way the camera worked with it, you saw Diggs before you saw Calvin, so I was like, shit, that's overthrowing. And I was like, oh wait, it's not for him at all. But anyways,
to be nice to Trayvon on one of, I think it was a scramble Jalen had that he didn't get a touchdown, but he almost got a touchdown. He had an amazing block on the edge.
He did. That was a great play. I know we're talking about Jalen's passing. That was a great play by Jalen because Darius had a run on late, so the ref stood over the ball, and Jalen does not want to burn the timeout. The play clock's at 5. The ref is barely out of there, and Jalen's screaming for the ball. He's clapping.
I kind of can't believe the snap didn't hit the ref.
Right. Probably very narrowly missed him. And who knows what the actual play was.
Right.
But you just see how great a player Jalen is when he just takes that snap, and it's like 3rd and 7, and he just runs for the first down. I mean,
they had one of the linemen going out. I mean, it looked almost like a screen out to the right that they just totally improvised on.
Jonah got way out in front of him. Jonah was like leading him down the field.
Yeah.
I thought he played great.
Yeah.
I thought that he missed some throws early. No, I was saying I was just still on Jalen.
Okay.
Yeah. He missed some throws. He came back and he made a lot of throws, and he had a pretty good game running the ball. And just generally, I thought he played really well. I thought Lane did him no favors. And I know we're not one for criticizing the coaches here, and absolutely, I'm certainly don't want to do that. But that 3rd and 15 was a bad decision. That was a bad decision to do a straight drop, and especially after earlier, like the previous drive, it was like 3rd and 8, and he played it safe. And now 3rd and 15, you're going to put him back there in the pocket, and you're going to try to ask him to throw past the sticks. That just does not seem wise at all.
That was a very odd decision.
Yeah, and that's obviously going to dovetail with stuff we're going to talk about for A&M. But, look, Jalen has to hold on to that ball. Okay, end of the day, he's got to hold on to the ball. But you're not doing him any favors when you're putting him in that situation, I don't think. And I'm sure Lane would probably admit that he'd like that one back.
Yeah. And, a lot has been made about, how often they ran I hate this term, but it seems to have become the accepted term, that how much they ran read option plays. Just using that as a catch-all term for veer, inverted veer, zone read, stuff like that. Such a variety of reads and formations and motion and stuff like that they did on those plays. And as he's done all season, Jalen made, I think I gift just about every one I saw. And I don't know that I saw a single one where I felt like Jalen made a bad read.
Yeah. There's just – I think Jalen's done a great job, and he sells the fake so well, it seems like. There was one, I think – it might have been the last drive of the second half when he pulled it on a zone read play, and it fooled the camera.
The camera completely. I remember that one.
Yeah. I just, and obviously, like, he's so good. He's so patient in terms of he does not force the pull. He's willing to give and give and give and give and give. And then right when you think you got him, then he pulls it like he did on that long touchdown. And
yeah.
It's so dangerous. And I feel like they also have the perfect complement of players for this scheme.
They have a couple tight ends who are good at blocking in space. Obviously, OJ's done a really great job. Miller Forstall, the freshman, they ran a couple read plays with him where he was running an arc block. Bama fans, we now use plays straight out of the Gus Malzahn playbook.
Absolutely, yeah.
So digest that a little bit.
The inverted view, which is like Alabama's. Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say, like, the inverted veer, which Alabama ran so many times on Saturday with so much success. That was like, Gus was like one of the maybe he didn't come up with it, but he was one of the first coaches and play callers to make that popular, running that with Cam back in 2010.
Oh, yeah, that was like his favorite play in 2010.
It was. So,
And we also saw the repeated plays that we were calling for.
Yeah, Carter did a great job pointing that out. You want to talk about that for a minute, Carter?
Yeah. So this was how I ended up getting started on the whole film review thing, and it was just I went to rewatch the game, and I noticed on the second drive, it's Alabama's first touchdown drive that ends on the reverse to Argarius. They go up to the line. It's 1st and 10 from the 21. And they run inverted veer. The end stays home, so Jalen hands off to Damian, and Damian gets 13 yards around the right end. They walk up to the line in the exact same formation, except this time Ardarius fakes the jet sweep motion, or fakes the jet sweep, does the motion across the formation. They run inverted veer again. The end stays home again, and Damian gets 18 yards. Then they go up to a line, new formation, Josh Jacobs in. They run zone read. Jacobs picks up 12, 13 yards. And then they come out to the line in the same formation. I don't think they did any motion. I literally think it was same formation, same play that time. And Jacobs gets 7 yards on that one.
And when you play with tempo, it's just sometimes there's just no stopping it, and it's. Carter compared it to Oregon, things that Oregon's done, and you saw it, 3 years ago with Auburn right? When they had so much success. I mean, you saw it against Alabama. You saw it in the SEC Championship against Missouri. Auburn has so much success repeating plays when they're at their best.
It's something that you see teams that love to go fast, and particularly teams that are spread to run teams, love to go up to the line and do that.
Everything is clicking in the run game. One thing that I was thinking about the other day, if you could pick the 2012 run game or this run game, which one do you take? Now, not comparing offensive lines or backs, or just the overall run game versus the overall run game.
I'm taking this one.
Yeah, I am too. I love the diversity in this run game.
There's so much diversity.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And we saw, I mean, really on Saturday we saw a focus on the option read game that we really haven't I mean, they got over 300 of their 400-something passing yards off. Now, that was the stat I heard, that it was something like 350 of the rushing yards. I think if you go and look at the tape, some of those plays are called keepers or handoffs.
Jalen's selling a fake when he doesn't actually have the option to pull it, you think, on some of those? Yeah,
there are some of those where I saw where it if you just watched sort of the mesh point, you would think that it was a read, but then you look at the line and there's unless they're doing some whole new shit and reading
like a linebacker or something,
which is possible. But there were plays to me where I didn't see a man on the line of scrimmage that was being read, and so it looked like just called handoffs or keepers to me. But
and there's a reason for Jalen to sort of sell the run action, even if he doesn't have he doesn't actually have the option to pull it, because it's just more eye candy for the second level defenders.
Exactly.
So that I think it's a very good point. Jalen handing the ball off with two hands and then selling a run fake after he hands the ball off does not necessarily mean that it was an option play.
Right.
Which is, I think, what Carter's trying to say. And it's a good
but
point.
Still, out of either those plays or those looks, they got the large majority of their rushing yards, which was, there was one play I remember that was an outside zone out of the pistol. There were some QB draws out of empty sets, which I adore that play. That's one of my favorites.
Love the QB. They had that early. They had one early in the third quarter, I think, when they came out in empty, and Tennessee just left the middle of the field open. And
it was like a 1st and 15, and it was in Jalen got the first down, no problem at all.
I love the keeps all the way. And also, I thought one thing that was really interesting was that, in past weeks when they got inside the 5, they love to do Jalen sort of like an outside power play or an outside zone play just to keep all the way.
Yeah.
But this game they did some option. They did at least once. Jalen scored on a zone read or some sort of option play from inside the 5.
Yeah.
Which I like. That's even diversifying the goal line run game even more. So just more steps to it.
I think we had talked about earlier how much better Alabama had gotten at scoring. We talked about, I think, inside the red zone, but I think S&P Plus does inside the 40. They are now the best team inside the 40 at converting.
That's crazy.
It's they're 6.4 points per trip inside the 40. That's insane.
That's insane.
That's unbelievable.
That's ridiculous.
That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's like they don't kick field goals. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even I want to say they're up to second in rushing success rate.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Just
they're not getting stuffed a whole lot. They're consistently churning out yards on the ground.
They never get behind the chains. It doesn't. It feels like when the offense is really running well. In the second half against Tennessee, I don't know if they ever got behind the chains.
Not that I remember. There was probably a time or two, but yeah.
Right.
Somebody
and all three. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say somebody we didn't really talk about last. We talked about after the show, but Bo.
Well, I just forgot to talk about the running backs. Yeah.
I was a little surprised. I think he was out there on the first drive.
Yeah,
I was going to bring that up, right? Which was weird. Clearly, he's not the starter or the best back, but it maybe had to do with sort of like a package thing. Because I don't know, I was thinking about that. The first drive, were there a lot of option plays on the first? I know it was only like 6 plays or something, but I didn't think that there were that many option plays on the first drive.
I don't think so. They don't tend to run the option plays with Bo as much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I remember one that sticks out to me was Bo. It was a handoff up the middle, and he had one guy he had to beat.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And just run straight into him.
Yep.
And
yeah, he's got to do better than that. He's too talented, and there's just too much room there for him just to be brought down so easily in that situation.
But obviously, he wanted to have a pretty great game. I mean, second. Yeah. I think he was the second leading rusher on the team by the end of the game.
After Jalen. I mean, it was pretty much all on the touchdown, which is a very nice play. I mean, he had a big hole, but I mean, it was just sort of a straight inside or outside zone. The hole was there. He hit it. There was a tackle attempt that he brushed off like it was nothing, and and it exploded. It was crazy watching him run down the sideline. I mean, he was kind of certainly showing off, at least physically, why he was so hyped coming into the season.
I think that I still think he's the third back though.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Because I think the other two their games are more diverse than Bo's.
Right.
I think Bo is an excellent complement as a third back, and not just any third back, but a third back that deserves 5 or 6 or 7 carries a game.
Yep.
Yeah.
But still just a third. I still think he's 3 there. I don't think he's ahead of Jacobs. At least not in my mind.
No.
Yeah.
Jacobs is really good. I feel like maybe we don't talk about him enough too, but just like, I mean, he's really, really good. He is got to be their best freshman back since Yeldon.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So.
I mean, he doesn't, who's his competition there? Like,
right, I know, that's true. Well, Derek didn't do much as a freshman. And
Ingram when he was a freshman.
Well, right. If you're going to go back further, right, you've got Ingram when he was a freshman, then you've got Trent when he was a freshman, which those guys are obviously players. But Jacobs really is quite good. He's so quick, and he's so elusive. And he doesn't need a lot of space to be elusive in either. I mean,
he's very elusive is really the best. But just when he's out in space, he does a great job in just making the right move to get around a guy.
Yeah, he's really nimble. It really should be just like a red flag to everybody else when Nick Saban is recruiting some unheralded prospect, because it's just like, why is he wasting his time?
Oh, it was though.
Right,
that was the thing.
Saying.
It was like after they found him,
his everything shot up.
Was it the rival?
Yeah, well, they didn't.
The Bama
bump. I don't think he got the bump because it was too late, and I think the rankings were finalized. But after Alabama offered, the whole country, he was in Oklahoma's backyard, and they were like, "Oh crap!" And they put the full court press. I mean, Bob Stoops helicoptered in to his high school or some shit like that. It was they put on the full press, but it was too late because I think he had already made up his mind, even if he hadn't actually committed to Alabama yet.
Yeah, so he's really a player. I guess before we moved off the running game, I just wanted to quickly say something about the offensive line, and specifically Bozeman, who is having just a great season. Yep. I'm not saying he's as good as Ryan Kelly was last year, but and it's a very different. He's being asked to do different things than Kelly did last year, but they're not losing much at center.
Yeah. No, the drop off hasn't been nearly as severe as you would have expected. He's doing a great job.
He really is. He's doing a phenomenal job. I think you could go as far. He might be their best. He might have had. He might be having the best season of any of the offensive linemen. Maybe. Would you say Jonah's having the best season?
Probably Jonah.
Yeah,
I would say, but in a. I don't think I would have said this a couple weeks ago, but Bradley's up there.
Yeah,
it's closer than I would have, a lot closer than I would have expected.
I mean, so much more than we expected when we were talking about him possibly being replaced. I mean, when we were talking earlier in the season about our best 5 linemen and him being one of the guys that comes out, I mean, he's come a long way since then.
Yeah, we were wondering if Piers Baker should move back to center and Cotton would play right guard and Bozeman would go back to the bench, and it's just like.
But that's not even a question. I mean.
Yeah, I guess that's a nice segue because I wanted to ask you guys what did we think about Cotton this week. I mean, he's pretty good,
I didn't watch
right?
him particularly closely. I know CFB Film Room tweeted something this week about that, like in the time he's played,
no pressures.
Yeah, something like that, or like a 99% pass blocking rate or something like that, which is, I remember I went back last week and watched all the plays he was in for Arkansas, and I thought he did a really good job for pass pro then. And I certainly don't remember him giving up any pressures against Tennessee. So he's been impressive. I don't know that I'm necessarily pushing for him to keep the job if Shank comes back, because I think Shank's. I think
really, Shank's a little bit better right now.
Yeah, as much as you don't want like a revolving door on your offensive line at this point later in the season, like I feel pretty good with both of them in there, to be perfectly honest. Like they're really like the offensive line has been consistently pretty good no matter which one's in there. So it's. I really don't have a strong feeling on that one. I feel comfortable.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I would say about the offense, passing game is not fully realized yet, maybe in part because it just doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But there are still so many opportunities that they're not necessarily taking advantage of at this point, and that's not a criticism because especially with how they ran the ball on Saturday, they just don't have to.
Right.
But maybe this week we see more of it. There's just with having so much success in the run game with the way that they're having that success, there's just going to be oceans in the secondary, for Jalen to throw the ball into, and you saw some of it, I guess, right? But I think I'd like to see them divert. I know we texted a little bit about this, but I'd like to see them diversify Calvin's route tree a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe give some of the routes, some of our Darius's routes, I'd like to see those given to Calvin. I'd like to see Calvin be put in a position where he's running some of those over routes behind the linebackers, which are not with opportunities to catch and run in space. So, they really like to use Calvin as more of that deep guy and then bring our Darius in underneath, and that seems to be sort of the general schematics to a lot of these passing plays. But I'd like to see those flipped around sometimes because I think we all agree that Calvin is the better player, and maybe they should still. He's slowly becoming more and more a part of the offense like he was last year. But I still think there's more ways to get him the ball.
Yeah,
I guess is sort of what I'm saying. So.
And then the defense. They were facing an extremely. We harped on about how bad Tennessee's offensive line was, and then they had the injuries, and then they had like more guys get hurt during the game. But Tennessee they had nothing.
Yeah,
right.
They had no answers. There was nothing that they were just getting it. Like I don't think they replicated their absolutely absurd percentage of pressures that they put up against Austin Allen, but it was still, I think it was above 50% is the number I saw, which is insane. And there was nothing in the running game. They had no room. Just a complete and utter domination.
He didn't. Tim didn't necessarily get the opportunities the whole game, and maybe he cooled off a little bit. But the first few series of that game for Tim were unbelievable.
Oh, he was on fire.
I was sitting back watching those first couple defensive possessions they had. I mean, like this guy's like the greatest pass rusher ever. I mean, he was unbelievable.
I mean, if the offensive lineman takes one false step,
it's over.
It just blows by them.
Over.
And even and that's not even the only thing he can do. Like the way he like converts his speed into pass.
Yes.
It's just, the way he bull rushes a guy. It's just like it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Carter talked last week. He said that he thinks that because he thinks that the solution against Dobbs is not to blitz and to play coverage. And you saw early in the game Alabama go with not just a lot of 4-man rushes, but a lot of 3-man rushes. I think they even got some sacks on some 3-man rushes. But the point is that clearly that idea was one that was shared by the defensive staff. It seemed like, and Nick talked about it after the game, it seemed like it was either that or rush 5 to keep him in the pocket.
Yeah.
So you have guys, you rush 5, so you have all the lanes covered. Mm-hmm. Or you rush 3 and you just play coverage. So both good strategies, I think.
Yeah.
And when I would say when it was 5, it wasn't some exotic overloaded blitz. It was a blitz with the intent to keep him in the pocket. So the point is they made sure on passing downs to make him play from the pocket. And I think it was clear very early in that game that Tennessee was not going to ever be able to do anything on passing downs. That if they were going to be able to make any hay against the Alabama offense, it was going to have to be on standard downs.
Whenever they got behind the chains, it was
over.
The drive was over. Did they convert a 3rd and long the entire game?
Probably not. And really quickly, Dobbs, I think, started feeling ghosts and started being very uncomfortable in the pocket. And Gary did a good job to point that out on the broadcast.
Yeah, he did.
That it so quickly, it got in his head.
There were times when they were on 3rd and long, and he would
check it down within
immediately check down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he wasn't giving the plays any chance.
They were fairly lucky to get the 10 they got. I mean, their best drive of the entire game was the one that ended in a field goal.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Alabama gifted them their only touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
I mean, they didn't earn that at all. They got it and they ran the ball twice and they scored. They take over like the 11 or something maybe?
Yep.
Yeah. No, the Alabama defense played well enough to hold them without a touchdown. It was just
Yeah, they got put in one bad situation.
Right. John Allen was great too, and I feel like he's so great that we almost take it for granted, and we don't say enough about him every week. And he's amazing every week. This was another just phenomenal game for John. He was maybe the best player in the defense on Saturday.
I mean, I really don't think it's an exaggeration to call John the best interior defensive lineman in the country. He does.
Yes.
He can play any position, and he does basically everything well.
It's unreal combination of speed and quickness and just he's completely unblockable one-on-one, whether it's a guard or a tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sean
we could just go down the list.
Sean Dion
was great. He was great. That's 2 straight weeks where he's been great.
Yeah, they had one play where Tennessee ran a sort of traditional option play, and Dobbs did a really good, Ronnie Harrison was the option defender, I think, and he drew Ronnie in and then pitched it out to her. And granted, the pitch was he caught the pitch kind of weird, and then Hurd took a bad angle from there. Yeah. But a second after he caught the ball, Sean Dion came flying in from the middle of the field and hit him for a 3-yard line. It was a crazy play.
First of all, why are you running the option with Hurd when you have Alvin? But yes, I mean But that was one that you're kind of you're pretty confident in Sean Dion going into next year a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was a really great play.
Let me ask you guys this. Is this inside linebacker duo better than last year's inside linebacker duo?
That's tough.
It is.
I'm inclined to say yeah. And I don't want to keep we keep asking these hypotheticals, and we keep being 2016, baby.
This team.
I'll take 2016. But I mean, we'll just look at it. I think and I adore Reggie, and he had a fantastic year last year. But I don't think it's a question that Ruben's is playing better this year than Reggie did last year.
Yeah.
And that's everything to do with how unbelievable Ruben has been, and nothing at all a knock on the way Reggie played last year. And then it comes down to Sean Dion versus last year Reggie, or last year Ruben. And
by the end of the year, Ruben was incredible last year, though. Because I know people that were saying he was by the end of the year he was already better than Reggie. And I don't know if I'd agree with that, but he was really good at the end of the year last year.
I would say he's probably at worst at this point at least as good as Ruben was last year. I mean, equitable to Ruben at this point last year, with Ruben being better than Reggie was last year.
Okay, that's this point. And these and either way, these guys are better edge to edge.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's there's much more speed overall.
And
which is funny because I wouldn't have said we've gone all year about how fast Sean Dion is playing, but like I would not have coming into this year said that they were faster. Right. It's really amazing with how fast he's looked this year.
They're truly the perfect inside linebacker duo to deal with sort of what Tennessee would give you on offense and what A&M is going to give you on offense this week. Like you can't ask for anything better as far as the skill set of those two players. So
right,
yeah, and I guess the other guy I would just quickly talk about is Ryan Anderson played great.
Yeah.
I would just
Ryan looked better. He only had a couple snaps doing it, but he looked better in space.
Yes.
He did. Yes, he did.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we talked about that last week, and he had the pass break. I can remember the pass breakup. I think maybe that was it, but I at least in that area, he.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great, and I'll tell you who's also great. Deron Payne is a great player.
Yes.
He's really good.
Like, Deron was impressive last year as a freshman. He played really well, but now he's like, we kind of wondered, like, is Deron the kind of guy that can stay on the field against
these
non-traditional offenses?
Yeah.
Question answered.
Deron is as good as I don't know. I don't know if he's already as good as like Jerron Reed or Ashawn Robinson or anything, but he, as far as like every down interior lineman, he's pretty good. I'll tell you one thing. I'll give him this. He rushes the passer better than any of those guys.
Yes.
He's a really good interior pass rusher.
Yeah, from a pure talent standpoint, I think he's as good of a 0/1 nose tackle as Alabama's had under Saban. He has not quite maybe put together the body of work that Jerron or Ashawn did.
Yeah.
But like you said, he's a better pass rusher than those guys were. And did y'all see that Vine? Cole?
Yeah, that call too.
Like, the double team.
We just threw that. Threw him.
Yeah.
I retweeted this. Shank retweeted that.
Yes, don't do that to me in practice.
Actor on and said, if you do this to me in practice, I'm gonna start a fight.
Yeah, because he was
like, I gotta preserve my manhood if you do that to me.
He just tossed him.
Yeah.
It's
the same thing you see from Tim going against outside guys. It's just right. No contest. Yeah.
Physical mismatches.
Yeah.
The individual talent that I know, again, this is an every week conversation, but it really is apparent every week, and it just jumps off the screen at you that the individual talent up front on this defense is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's a star. They have like 7 or 8, they have like 7 superstars. John Allen, Deron, they're all stars.
Yeah. We've individually raved about every single starter on this front seven. Yeah. Every single one.
Yeah.
And then you have somebody like Deshaun Hand who's a backup to these guys.
Right.
Who had a pretty good game.
Yeah. These guys are all either now they're all American candidates or they will be, and that's just crazy to have that many guys who are just like they would be if they were on any other team, they would be the guy. If Deron Payne was on 95% of the teams in college football, he would be the guy in the defensive front.
Yeah.
Same for Sean Dion Hamilton at linebacker.
Yeah.
But instead, Deron Payne is only their second best defensive lineman. Sean Dion Hamilton is their second best inside linebacker. It's crazy that those guys are so great, and they even have guys that are better than them. So
it's insane.
The front's good. The front's good. I want to talk more about the front when we get to A&M because obviously that's another interesting matchup. But
so the secondary obviously was a point of concern coming in. They really weren't tested to anywhere near the degree.
Yeah.
I mean, not really tested much at all, in fact. But they generally held up well.
Sure.
Anthony Averett, I think, had a good game.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we had seen enough from him to feel a little more positive, since we had kind of designated him as the guy to go after and avoid.
I want to see what happens this week.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think he's going to get some matchups with Reynolds, and they're going to test his ability to play the ball.
Yeah, like if he gets isolated and bump and run against Josh Reynolds, I mean that's.
I'd like to see what happens. Right.
Every time, right?
Yeah, Moreland played a good game though.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ronnie had the pick six.
Yeah. I thought Ronnie had a really good game in general.
Yeah, I think he graded out really. PFF had him grading out really well. Yeah, so he had a good game. So, just again, the opportunities were sort of few and far between for the secondary, but yeah, I mean they definitely played well. Yeah, they definitely played well. God, it was just Tennessee offense never had a chance. I mean, they were just never in the game. Eddie returned another punt for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And we were really gushing about Eddie the next
Eddie
day.
is so good with the ball in his hands. Really, really impressive. I loved that story about how that was it was O.J. Howard that was pushing for him to get that job.
Really? I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
an article today.
Yeah, the one Mitch texted to both of us about.
Oh, I didn't read it. I just saw what you said about the other
right.
when they go for block, which I guess we'll talk about in a second. But I didn't get a chance to read it yet.
Yeah, so OJ was vying for him through the offseason, apparently into this season, for him to be the guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Which you could. I was curious what spurred him to even advocate. So
yeah,
it was off. I think they said it was because of a pick six that he had last year.
Again, in the Western Kentucky.
That's right.
But he had the pick six in the Western Kentucky game, and I remember some reporters asking him after that game about returning punts, and then suddenly he's out there against Ole Miss, and he changes the game against Ole Miss when he brought one back there.
Right.
Every time he touches the ball, I feel like he's got a chance to go to the house.
Yeah. And
I thought the one other thing that when Mitch showed us this article, it was this idea that Eddie Fair caught a ball when he shouldn't have. The basic idea is when you go for a block, it doesn't mean you can't hit a return. Mm-hmm. Because you get they get the coverage, or sort of the punting team gets so out of their lane sometimes when they're trying to protect against the block that it opens up a return.
Yeah,
I think Cyrus's touchdown return against Mississippi State last year was on a block. So, but yeah, anyways, he's great. And he's also safe. And, knock on wood, obviously. But I never feel like the ball is going to be put at risk with him back there.
Sure.
Yeah. I saw a really great clip that someone did. I can't remember where this was. But talking about how just generally great his vision is, and they were showing him when he's preparing to catch the one that he took back for the touchdown. He looks up, he's tracking the ball, and he looks down, and he sees the blockers, and he looks, and you can see him look back up and down a couple times. So he's identifying the coverage and where he's got his blocks and where he's got space, which is really cool.
Yeah. And the last thing I just want to touch on about the special teams, because maybe we haven't talked about this quite enough, is J.K. is having a really nice bounce back here.
Yes, he is. He's booming them.
He's back to that 2014 version of himself, which is great. They haven't had to punt that much this year, but you always feel like they can flip field position, and it's especially important to have him playing at such a high level when. And again, we'll touch on this more with A&M, but I think we all agree that on third and longs, they need to be careful, and they need to be willing to call plays that are likely to end in a punt.
Yeah.
Rather than risk putting the ball in harm's way. So if you're going to call the game like that, it's especially important to have a punter that you can really count on to flip field position, and J.K. I think is very much that guy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So A&M.
Which side do we want to do first?
I guess I would just say first in general that.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah.
So obviously the circumstances going into this game are a lot. Alabama is now the one that's kind of coming off a tough stretch, and they're fortunately Alabama's healthy, other than Shank apparently. I mean, obviously, like, they're worn down. Like, you play 8 straight weeks. Like, even if guys are ostensibly healthy, they're not going to be like 100%. But, and obviously, so A&M's coming off a bye, and they're healthier in general. But they're kind of a team that's a lot like Tennessee.
Yes.
They have more talent on the defensive side of the ball, I think. They have better receivers than Tennessee does, but they've got a quarterback that's kind of inaccurate down the field, but a really dangerous runner. They've got a really good running back. They have a really, really diverse and effective spread running game, which is something that they haven't had a whole lot of in the past. But when I watched that game between them and Tennessee, it kind of felt like you were watching two very similar teams playing each other.
I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. To be a 19.5-point favorite against a top 10 team in late October is kind of insane. That is crazy. I thought it was going to be like 10.
Yeah, no, that's what I was. I mean, I was expecting something more in line with the Tennessee spread.
You're talking like almost 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
that's a lot of points.
Yeah, well, I mean, it opened at 16.5, and then you figure like, wow, 16.5, that's a big one. You figure the money's going to drive that back down. And it's going to stabilize maybe more around 2 touchdowns, but it went up.
Yeah. The bigger concern maybe the biggest concern before we get into more specifics is, I guess, like Carter mentioned, just the general state of both teams. A&M coming off a bye, Alabama having played 2 not tough games in a row because they were pretty easy wins, but 2 I don't know,
2 conference
somewhat
road
taxing
games.
2 conference road,
but even still, I mean,
you want to use, but
this feels like as healthy an Alabama team as we've seen really going into a bye week.
Yeah.
In recent memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They are real healthy.
And I guess my worry as far as that goes is that it's going to be sort of like Tennessee was last year, that it's like everybody's going to be like ostensibly healthy, but they might just kind of like be a step slow.
Yeah.
And that could,
You know what I was thinking though? Do you guys think that last year's team was maybe more susceptible to wearing themselves down, especially with their style of offensive play, where it was just like pound Derek, pound Derek, pound Derek? And I feel like that's like a far more taxing.
Well, and that offense wasn't nearly as efficient as this one is.
Right.
And like aside from the second half of the Arkansas game, like the defense hasn't had to like go out on the field for long stretches because the offense can't sustain a drive.
Right. They just flat out play more players this year, don't they? Than last year. Last year they used on offense. Sorry, on offense.
Yeah.
Oh,
Kenyon spells Derek. Kenyon spelled Derek last year. This year you have a true 3-headed monster at running back. You're playing 3 tight ends.
Yep.
You have your 3 main receivers with Dieter, Ardarius, and Ridley, but you're working in other guys.
Yep.
Right.
Robert Foster, Trayvon Diggs, Cam Sims. They play a lot of guys on offense. I mean, they really do.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Like they certainly didn't seem tired against Tennessee this past week, and maybe this is the week where it kind of finally all sets in. But like, they're not showing signs right now of that kind of fatigue.
No. And they also only played right. And they also only played 3 quarters against Tennessee.
Yeah.
Basically, and then because if you go back, and you look at last year, leading up to that Tennessee game, you had sort of a very tough game that was a fourth quarter game against Arkansas 2 weeks before, and then the week before you had to go to Texas A&M, and you went up big, but the second half was really a struggle, and it's just a very different feel coming into this game. It felt like you really were sort of struggling in a sense coming into the Tennessee game last year. You're not really doing that coming into this game, I don't think.
Yeah.
But it's still, I guess, if you're looking for something to be concerned about, right?
Right.
I mean, if there is something to be, team coming off the bye, and you also worry about the other advantages that are conferred to a team coming off the bye. Saban said that the only reason they had issues early in the run game against Tennessee was that Tennessee showed them some new formations, and Alabama's fits weren't right early because they weren't prepared for those formations. And it's also a good example of the fact that, like, stuff like that with your new formations, whatever, that can work for a couple of plays, but it's not going to be something that's going to keep you in a game for 60 minutes. But at the same time, when you're dealing with a team coming off a bye, especially a team with a very diverse offensive approach that A&M has, it's possible that you're going to see they have a chance to install a lot of things that can help get them some momentum early in the football game. So I do think that that's a little bit of a concern as well.
Right. So to get a bit more into A&M specific and players and matchups and stuff like that, I guess the big story for A&M on offense is, everyone wants to talk about Trevor Knight and the Sugar Bowl. Look, analogy here, Trevor Knight is Steven Garcia. He had a fantastic game against Alabama in that Sugar Bowl. The rest of his career at Oklahoma and at A&M, he's frankly been a pretty mediocre quarterback, certainly throwing the ball. He's been a very dangerous runner this year. He leads the SEC in rushing touchdowns. He's been very explosive, and when they've given him space, he's made huge plays in the running game. So that's certainly something to watch out for. But he's completing like 53% of his passes this year, and that's pretty much in line with what he's done for the entirety of his career. And that's with, we'll talk more about A&M's receivers later, but they have really good receivers.
Right.
And he's just not accurate.
No.
He really isn't. He has an ugly throwing motion.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to make plays through the air, they're going to be on these shots down the boundaries, right? Sort of trying to stretch the field down the sidelines on a lot of fade patterns. When he sees sort of cover 1, cover 3 looks, and he can take these shots. But, they do not really do much in the intermediate part of the field. They do not really do much between the numbers in the passing game. It's a very limited passing game. If they're at their best, I think Knight threw the ball 22 times against Arkansas. I think ideally that's how many times they would like him to throw the ball every game.
Yep.
Is 22 times. And they understand that he won't throw for a great percentage, but you throw 22 times, you hit some big plays, and you're going to come home with a pretty good YPA, and you're also going to allow your run game to be the focal point of your offense rather than your passing games to be the focal point of your offense.
And the run game's very good. I mean, their offensive line has generally done a good job in run blocking. They have Travion Williams, who is
really good.
Yeah, he's if you were going to vote for SEC Freshman of the Year right now, he'd probably second. After Jalen, and he's explosive. He's not big, but he's strong. Just a very, very good back in general, and with him and Knight and some of the read option looks they use, it's been a very effective running game.
How well do they have to run the ball against Alabama and have a shot?
mean, they have
because
to hit
they're not
going
to better than anyone else has.
Because they're not going to be able to throw the ball if they can't run the ball. No. They could hit some shots down the field, some 50-50 balls, throwing it up against the corners, but that's not going to get you all that far in the passing game. So they don't have much of a chance in the passing game unless they can really establish the run. And even with the possibility of the run opening up the passing game, most of their offensive production anyway comes in the running game. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you know, if they're good at – see, I just don't know what they have to do in the running game to be successful. I mean, 250 yards, 200 yards, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to have to be a whole lot better. I don't know if I can stick a number on it, but they're just going to have to do a whole lot better than anyone else has done this year against Alabama. And granted, they have a very good running game, but I don't know. For me, like, I'll take Alabama's front seven against anybody.
Well, I guess that's the next question. Can anybody run the ball against Alabama? And
I think there's a strong possibility that there's sort of a, you know, you were talking about coming in and installing things on the bye week like Tennessee did last year.
Right.
And that sort of happened to Alabama a couple times this year, like where the opponent comes out on the first drive and they get a couple plays and they kind of grind out a little bit of a drive, and then goal or Alabama forces a, you know. Yeah,
Kentucky did that. Ole Miss had a drive. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Tennessee's first 3 plays each went for like, you know, it was like 7, 8, 15 yards. Like they got first downs, like 3 or 4 first downs on their first drive, and then Alabama kind of stood up and ended that. And so it wouldn't surprise me if A&M has a little success, if they do some new things and end up getting a little success because of that to start out. But over the course of the game, Alabama's front is too talented. They're too fast. I just don't see anyone getting a consistent running game against this team.
Yeah. Their running game has lived off of the big plays this season. I mean, just
A&M's.
Yes, and you know, maybe they hit 1 or 2, but even if they hit 1 or 2, I mean, you still feel good about the rest of the game. You still feel good about Alabama's defense being able to consistently stop them.
Right. Carter opened up this discussion by talking about sort of the similarities between Tennessee and A&M. So I guess my thought here and my question that I wanted to pose to you guys is how instructive is Alabama's defensive performance against Tennessee, especially as far as how they defended Tennessee's running game? How instructive is that in terms of how they're going to play this week against A&M? And I mean, you know, the A&M offensive coordinator got a question, right, about can you run the ball against Alabama even if Tennessee didn't? And he responded like he should to a ridiculous question. But it doesn't it doesn't change the fact that, like, that might be instructive in some way, right?
Yeah.
Instructive it is a pretty similar running game.
Predictive.
Yeah, instructive as in
predictive. I think Alabama will play it in obviously, like, A&M's offensive line is better than Tennessee's. Like, they're probably going to have more success.
The center's a freshman, though, I think I saw. And maybe he's had some issues this year.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's had some issues. So,
but I mean, every single, like, they don't have like a, you know, a Matthews, a Jokel, and what was the other guy's name? Way, I think.
Yeah.
They don't have really elite offensive linemen. I don't think. And I just like every individual matchup along the front. I like for Alabama.
Yep.
Yeah. I think, and I also think that this Alabama front in particular is really well positioned to defend these sorts of offenses, right? I mean, with all the speed and quickness that they have up front, and with how, you know, the other thing, not just
they run so well,
right? And the inside linebackers, both of them, are so good and quick to diagnose plays, and I think that's especially important when you go against the option stuff.
Right.
It is challenging, though. You know, they're at their best. A&M's at their best when they're bringing Kirk in motion, and then they're running option looks with the back and with Knight. there's a lot of window dressing there, and there's
they get Ricky Seals-Jones back, who they use in like an H-back role sometimes, which messes people up a lot. So they do a lot of stuff that puts sort of mental pressure on a defense.
Right, right. This is sort of like the pressure that this Alabama running game puts on other defenses. So, right. It takes phenomenal eye control and phenomenal discipline to be able to defend this team. But I thought they held up, and yes, part of it was the Tennessee offensive line, no question. But they just seemed to do a great job being disciplined against Tennessee's option looks.
Yeah.
So
they never seemed caught off guard by anything.
Right. They never seemed to get way out of their fits, and they sort of performed as I would expect them to, and I'm sure that A&M's going to hit some plays, and it's going to be hard to keep them under 100, for instance. But I really do think that Alabama's going to do enough, and I think that once it gets to a passing down, I just don't see how A&M can do anything on passing downs.
Yeah. I mean, you just think who of anyone in recent years has had a consistently good success rate running the ball against Alabama.
Right.
And
Auburn.
Yeah, I mean,
right. If you want to go back to 2 years or whatever.
But this Alabama front is the best of any of those, and it's the most well-equipped to deal with the type of running game that Texas A&M has. So I don't see it happening.
I really think they're just too good. I just think they're too good.
Yeah. A&M's receivers, I think A&M is going to hit, we talked about this a bit, they're going to hit some big plays in the passing game. I think Knight's going to throw up some 50-50 balls on fades and fade stops and stuff like that. But particularly when you've got a guy like Josh Reynolds out there, he's just going to come down with some of those. But I just don't think they will have consistency. They won't be able to sustain drives.
Yeah.
When they score, it's going to be, they got a big play either to score or get them close, or Alabama turned the ball over or something like that. I just don't see them grinding out drives. I don't see anyone grinding out drives on this defense.
Yeah, and in terms of staying fresh, Saban talked about how against Tennessee they played their sort of nickel rabbits package, where they put the two linebackers on the field, the two outside linebackers on the field at the same time, which allows them not only to get more speed on the field, but allows them to use their depth more, right? Because they have more depth at the linebacker position than they do at defensive line. So if they play a lot of nickel rabbits against A&M, then they can almost really just go four deep at defensive line with Allen, Payne, Hand, and Tomlinson, because you're only dealing with two spots on the line. So I think that's a really good strategy to keep them fresh, and let Christian Miller and let Rashaan Evans get some snaps at outside linebacker. That's fine. I just think that'll really let you play to your depth there. That means you really have four guys at outside linebacker for two spots and four guys at defensive line for two spots. So they really should be able to stay fresh on Saturday, I would think.
Yeah. On the other side of the ball, obviously, Myles Garrett is one of the best, if not the best players in football. He's going to win his share of battles. As good as Cam Robinson is, when the two of them are lined up one-on-one, you expect Garrett to win those. Deshaun Hall is a very good player. The thing about A&M's, first of all, they're in terms of rush yards per game, they're 68th in the country, which is mediocre. They are ranked 109th in defensive rushing S&P Plus, which is not great. They seem to be very boom or bust in terms of stopping the run. So their stuff rate, I think, where you get somebody at or behind the line of scrimmage is very high, but then their defensive. There's I think it's one that Bill Connolly uses. I think it's a General Football Outsiders stat called adjusted line yards, and it's basically the idea is that the first couple of yards of a run are all on the offensive line, and then from there it's a mixture of the offensive line and the running back, and after that it's all the running back. And then in terms of when you flip that and you look at it for defenses, like how much are they giving up to opposing offensive linemen? Their adjusted line yards is not good. I don't remember the number, but they're ranked pretty low on that. So it sounds like, and it makes some sense when you have two defensive ends who are as good as Garrett and Hall are, that you're going to make some big plays and you're going to get TFLs and you're going to put people behind the chains sometimes. But also they're just when they're not making plays like that, teams are churning out consistent yards on them. Right.
So starting there, starting with the ends are good. But let's just scheme around that a little bit.
Right.
You know what I mean? Let's give some help against Garrett. They can afford to give some help against Garrett. And like we talked about, let's not, when you get on passing downs, call the plays with the idea that you just want to live to tell the tale.
Yeah.
Okay? And you know what? When you have the kind of quarterback that Alabama has, you can call some keeps there, and you can gash them, and you can pick it up on a 3rd and 10 if they get undisciplined.
If they're pinning their ears back and coming after you, there's going to be space. And Jalen's been as good as anyone about getting yards in those situations.
And we saw when they played Tennessee how much success Tennessee had with screen passes. Mm-hmm. So the point is that not only does playing it safe obviously avoids what happened against Tennessee with that turnover, and it avoids putting Jalen in harm's way, and it avoids allowing Texas A&M to play to their one huge strength on defense, which is the ends rushing the passer.
Yeah.
But it's also not the equivalent of just going to 4th down and punting the ball. They can pick up first downs like that. There's no question. So I really think that has to be the strategy on Saturday as far as those situations go. As far as running the ball go ahead.
I just think, and this is probably going to dovetail into what you were going to say, but I think they should be able to, as long as, if Jalen does a good job making his reads and the offensive line, Myles Garrett is a good run defender, but in terms of a run blocking matchup, if it's him on Cam, I'll take Cam.
And that's the other thing. He just, he doesn't have the ability to impact the game against the run like he has the ability to impact the game against the pass.
Right.
And that's not necessarily his own issue, right? It doesn't say anything about him as a player. It's just the constraints of that position, right? You can't change the game as a run defender at defensive end. You can change the game as a pass rusher at defensive end. So put him in positions where he can't be that game-changing force.
Yeah, and I think you've seen recently they've been saving him for passing down situations recently.
Yeah, he's been hurt, so I think he's kind of been on a snap count. But I think they definitely are. They try to maximize his impact by really having him focus on pass rushing, which is, it's the thing that he's best at, and he can really change a game like that. But I just think they should be able to stay ahead of the chains most of the time, and that's going to keep the one real streak. There are two safeties, Armani Watts, and I think the other guy's name is Evans, are pretty good players, but the rest of the defense outside of Garrett and Hall is not, to me, there's nothing really impressive about it.
There's no question that there is space in the middle of that defense in the passing game. Mm-hmm. There's going to be so many opportunities to hit pass plays against them.
Dobbs looked good passing against them.
Yeah, he did. Dobbs threw for 450 yards or something against them. Yeah. Because he was throwing the guys wide open in the middle of the field. So, and they missed so many tackles.
Yeah.
Which is another huge thing. When Alabama spreads you out with that and they run the ball, if you can't tackle in space, you don't really have a chance.
Yeah.
Right? In order to stop Alabama, in order to stop the Alabama run game, you need to be able to make individual one-on-one tackles in space. And if they're not going to do that consistently, then Alabama is going to pick up chunk after chunk after chunk on the ground.
And it's a similar sort of thing on the other side of the ball. Because Texas A&M sort of has a similar type running game,
Right.
But Alabama does tackle well in space. They have so many players that are good at that. And I don't think A&M does.
Yeah. And it's so costly. You miss a tackle. I mean, it's almost, that's 5 or 6 yards, like guaranteed, because you're so spread out.
Yeah.
I think right, absolutely. That's the benefit, right, of the spread to run approach, is that it makes the missed tackle so costly.
Yeah.
Chavis is probably going to be super aggressive, I guess.
Oh, extremely, yeah.
But
we kind of welcome them. I mean,
right. That's the thing. You should welcome that.
This Alabama offense can really punish a team that tries to be really aggressive and becomes undisciplined because of it.
Exactly. You can look at they ran for 450 yards or whatever they did against Tennessee. Well, if Chavis goes crazy and run blitzes all the time and is bringing 5 and 6 guys on standard downs, that is not going to be a difficult adjustment for the staff as far as let's just let Jalen make easy throws.
Yeah.
Right.
I think this could be a huge game for OJ. I know we kind of say that every week, but I especially think that this matchup seems to suit him pretty well as far as all the space in the middle of the Tennessee defense and the fact that you absolutely know that Chavis is going to, the A&M defense, and the fact that Chavis is going to do everything he can to combat the Alabama run game.
Yeah.
And also the stuff we've talked about how Alabama's style of offense and their running attack creates opportunities to attack the seams and to attack that space between the linebackers and the safety. So, I think that OJ could
I would not be at all surprised to see, Lane loves his misdirection plays, but I would not be at all, I think if they just sort of play straight up, they can have consistent success against this defense, but I would not be surprised to see Lane pull out some kind of trickeration to try to hit big plays, because if they're going to play that aggressively, you're going to have opportunities to really punish them for when they're not they're not looking out for your reverses, your play action, stuff like that. So I would not be surprised to see Lane pull a few rabbits out of his hat. Yeah. He usually does, but this is a game in particular where I think that might come into play.
The one interesting number I saw about their defense, obviously, I think S&P Plus has a metric called the havoc rate, which I think is a combination of, for the defensive backs, it's like passes defended, tackles for loss, interceptions, sacks, those kinds of metrics. A&M's secondary is like 5th in the nation in terms of havoc rate, which was kind of the one standout number I think about their defense, which just I think speaks to the aggressiveness that Chavis likes to play on defense, which means when we're running those screens or the jet sweeps, we should probably expect to see some of those stuff behind the line, some of those stopped at the line. But that also means that the one time that they don't do that probably means it's going to be a big play.
Yeah. When they come flying up. When they come flying upfield to try to make a tackle on a screen and they just miss the tackle and leave Ardarius free for like a 30-yard gain or something. Or you can do our favorite play, the fake screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would just maybe just advocate some patience on behalf of the Alabama fans this week. So there may be a few stuffs, but just know that the plays are coming.
Yeah. Okay. I actually am going to have to go pretty soon.
Yeah, so do I actually. So.
Any
do
quick
do
little
score predict?
Oh yeah.
Do we want to do score predictions because it's a thing now that we do? So.
That is a thing that we do. I'm going to say it's going to be a similar score to last year, I think. So last year was 43-20. I'm going to say 42-21.
God, that was mine.
So my official prediction, I would not necessarily bet on Alabama to cover because I think the line is a good one. I think it's going to be around. I think the margin is going to be about what the spread is. So I could see 41-24, 42-21, something like that. I just think I don't think A&M sustains on offense well enough to score more than about 20 points. I think they hit a couple big plays, and if Alabama gives up a bad turnover too, it could get a little closer. But I think they hit a couple big plays for scores and score around 20 points. But I just don't think they can I think Alabama wears them down at the end and just grinds out some drives and they've scored. They've scored 40+ points on just about everybody, and I don't see A&M stopping that trend.
I agree.
Yep. Yeah, I could see a backdoor
well.
cover right at the end. Just
exactly,
or whatever. But I expect it to float around the line right now for most of the game.
Let me do one more. Which Alabama player scores on defense this week?
I'm thinking it's Reuben Foster's turn.
Okay. I was thinking about.
I think it's time that an inside linebacker scored.
Sean Dion hasn't.
Yeah, Reuben hasn't. Sean Dion hasn't. Let's see. Eddie has. Ronnie has. Minka has. Marlon
starting
has.
secondary minus Averett.
So right. Averett
so that's
hasn't.
3.
Averett hasn't. Hootie hasn't. The two inside linebackers hasn't.
The only
Ryan Anderson hasn't.
Right. So that would be
and Dalvin Tomlinson.
Dalvin hasn't, and Deshaun Hand hasn't. But
yeah, I guess so I guess
they've got 7 that have scored.
7 of the starters.
You know what though? You can go with someone who already has scored. Although it's kind of boring,
as fun.
You can
give me Ryan.
You go with Ryan
Ryan's
Anderson?
probably I think I think you're gonna have like a I wouldn't be surprised to see let's say Ryan makes a TFL and Ruben's coming in on a run blitz and the ball pops out and just lands right in front of Ruben and he takes it to the house. Yeah.
All right. It's in a similar vein. I'll my guy was going to be Sean Dion Hamilton, so I'll stick with him.
Right.
So I mean, it's just it's just gonna happen. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
One of those guys is gonna score.
Yeah.
You can't break the streak. You can't. This is the most
Who's Alabama's
streak,
leading rusher?
Ooh, I like that. The safe. Well,
I like Damien.
Jalen again. Jalen's
again?
going to do it again.
I was going to say Damien.
I think I like Damien in this game.
Yeah,
but you also have he splits carries, so I mean, Jalen's getting roughly half of.
Yeah.
And I also think that, one, because we're going into the bye, and two, because obviously, and we didn't really touch on this, but this is the de facto SEC West Championship.
It is.
Yeah.
When you couple those two things together, and then when you also factor in that the Alabama offense is clearly at their best when they're running Jalen a lot, whether it be on design keeps or option plays, I think that Lane is going to run him a lot this week.
Yeah.
I think we're likely to see a whole lot of option stuff again. But again, with some one of my favorite, one time they were down in the red zone and Lane, just for the hell of it, ran a little like a pitch sweep to it was either Damien or Jacobs. It was a power a power pitch sweep basically, and Lester Cotton was the pulling guard. And yeah, it wasn't a huge play, but it got 8 yards, and I was like,
"Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
where did that come from?"
Just for the fun of it, they're just doing different things. Yeah,
I think Lane will pull out some new stuff, and I said in terms of the trick plays, but I think he'll pull out some new wrinkles in the run game too.
No, I would like to think that A&M is at least smart enough to know that they have to force somebody else to beat them besides Jalen, but we'll see.
Might not be. It's not that easy. It's not that easy.
It's not.
Though,
no,
right?
it's not.
Because that's the thing. You lose. You chase the back one time. Tennessee, they don't chase the back. They don't chase the back. They don't chase the back. They finally chase the back, and then Jalen pulls it and goes for 50 yards or whatever for that touchdown. So, he's just – it just takes one. That's the thing. It just takes one.
Yep.
So, anyway, I think Alabama's going to win. If they don't, that'll suck. And then we're going to spend the bye week talking about all the things that need to happen for Alabama to get back to get into a playoff. If they win, book your tickets to Atlanta. So,
both Atlantas.
Both. That's right. Both Atlantas.
All right. Well, roll Tide. Hopefully, I'll see some of y'all in Tuscaloosa this weekend.
Yeah.
I'll probably be at Druid City before the game, so if anybody wants to hit me up there. But roll Tide, and we'll see you next week. Hopefully, heading into a happy rather than miserable bye week.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, roll Tide.
Roll Tide.